Lantern light trembled against the ragged stone walls, dancing with each gust of wind that crept through the cracks in the ancient roof. The monastery had stood for centuries on a lonely peak, where mist wreathed the silent forest below. Sinister tales clung to its black-stained ramparts, embroidered by travelers who passed through the narrow alpine pass. My curiosity drew me to its iron-bound gates at dusk, when shadows elongated and the sound of chanting, deep and hollow, throbbed through the air like a distant drum. I had heard rumors that the monks here nurtured midnight rituals, but only once you stepped inside the courtyard could you sense the oppressive gloom. The stones themselves felt as though they had long ago surrendered their purity. Now it was as if the walls entombed a malign spirit, held at bay only by ceaseless invocation. Inside, the echo of chanting reverberated through the torch-lit corridors, leading me deeper into the gloom. The monks wore austere robes of faded brown. Their heads were shaved to stubble, their eyes wide and sunken from ceaseless vigil. The lead monk, an imposing man named Brother Cornelius, emerged from the ranks. He had a weathered face and an unsettling calm about him, as though he peered beyond mortal sight. He beckoned me forward with a palsied hand and ushered me to a bench near the front corridor. "You came seeking truth," he said softly. "Know this. Once you witness our rites, you shall never unsee." I tried to hide my trepidation, nodding in acceptance. Something in his voice told me that turning back would do no good. The sense of entrapment was palpable, a tightening of the air that made me wonder if I had just relinquished my own freedom. I could hear the chanting intensifying, a throbbing harmony emanating from the great hall up a winding set of stairs. Even from where I stood, I felt a cold brush of dread along my spine. Brother Cornelius led me through an arduous climb toward that central chamber, his steps surprisingly silent on the worn stones. The chanting grew louder, weaving in and out in a polyphonic wave of unearthly tones. No words were discernible, only raw, resonant syllables. Torchlight flickered against altars carved with contorted faces, each face locked in perpetual horror. I found myself wondering who had carved these monstrous visages, and what had driven them to such extremes. At last, we stepped through a towering wooden door that led into the monastery's great chapel. The space was cavernous, its high ceiling lost darkness, except for a faint outline of beams. At the front, an altar of black marble glistened, with melted wax from a multitude of guttering candles. Rows of monks were kneeling, their heads bowed. Their voices joined in that droning chant, an intangible hush that resonated into my very core. Something about it felt older than memory, like an echo of things that had no place in our living world. Brother Cornelius gestured for me to sit on a small wooden stool at the edge of the chapel. Then, in the hush that followed, he stepped forward. "Brothers," he intoned, "our nightly vigil awaits. Let your hearts remain steadfast, for the hour is nearly upon us." A thrumming stillness followed his words. The monks bowed their heads collectively, and I felt a creeping sense of claustrophobia, despite the chapel's vastness. The air itself thickened with apprehension. I could not help but shiver at the notion of a nightly vigil, some tradition that demanded unwavering devotion when the world outside was fast asleep. This was a ritual I had never encountered, and now, standing on its threshold, I only half wished to see what it truly entailed. A battered bell tolled once, and every monk rose in unison. They aligned themselves around the edges of the chapel, forming a semicircle. Candlelight made their faces look carved from pale ash. Brother Cornelius's deep voice led a new chant, equally haunting, but punctuated with irregular intervals of silence. Each pause set my nerves on edge, for it felt that something was listening from beyond the stone walls. Something dark and starved for the invocation that these men were offering. After several long moments of this entreaty, I saw movement in the high reaches of the chapel. At first, it was just a flicker, a distortion of the candlelight against the rafters. Then a shadow broke away from the darkness. My mind reeled as I realized it had shape and purpose. A creature was descending, gliding on elongated wings that reflected no natural color. It was as if it was fashioned from living shadow, yet solid enough to land with a soundless grace near the altar. Its face, if one could call the twisted countenance a face, was half obscured by membranous folds of leathery flesh. Horns or protrusions curled from its brow. Wings framed its shoulders as it stood upright. A dreadful hush consumed the chapel. All chanting ceased, and not a single monk dared move. Even Brother Cornelius kneeled, bowing his head so low it touched the stone floor. A single thought rose in my dazed mind. This was the demon they had summoned, the being that answered their nightly call. The demon's presence unnerved me. An odor like burned incense and rotted parchment washed over us. A scratch of talons against stone made my heart jolt. I could hear its breath, an unnatural rasp rattling in its chest. Silence stretched, unbearably tense. Brother Cornelius lifted his head slightly and spoke, barely above a whisper. "We call upon you, Judge of the darkness. Hear our supplication. We beseech your condemnation upon the wicked. Spare the virtues and devour the sins." The demon inclined its head as though it acknowledged the invocation. When it spoke, its voice rattled through the columns of the chapel, each syllable twisting into an unholy echo. "Bring forth the living who stand in doubt and darkness." Its words chilled me to the marrow. Each tone smoldered with malice, yet an ancient authority underpinned it. The monks turned their gazes toward me, and I felt an all-consuming dread that made my bones ache. I sensed their silent demand as though I were the subject of this nightly trial. Brother Cornelius beckoned, and I found myself rising with unsteady legs. I approached the demon with no plan, no understanding of what was expected. My instincts shouted at me to flee, but not a single muscle obeyed. When I knelt a yard away from it, the demon turned its head, cold eyes focused on my face. "You have come unbidden into this domain," it said. "Your soul is unsettled. Lay bare your sins, mortal, or accept them unconfessed." My mouth was parched. I forced my trembling lips to shape words, but I had no idea where to begin. I have come in search of knowledge," I managed to stammer. Time slowed around me, the torchlight dulling in my vision. The demon's breath roiled in stale hot waves. "Knowledge," it repeated with a sneer concealed somewhere in its disfigured features. "All knowledge bears a price. Do not cower. Strip your soul before the judge, or face penalty unspoken." Behind me, the monks resumed chanting, so reduced in volume that it seemed to seep from beneath the stones. Their eyes glowed with a fanatical zeal, as though they believed themselves righteous in bringing me here. My mind raced through every misdeed I had thought inconsequential. Fear magnified them into monstrous sins. I thought of petty lies, of hopes turned cruel, of regrets that slid beneath my conscience. The demon demanded I speak those truths aloud, and so I did. In a faltering whisper, I confessed to each weakness, each carefully buried fragment of guilt. With each admission, I felt the demon's scrutiny intensify, as though the weight of my words fueled its dominion. My voice quavered, echoing against the chapel's worn stones. Brother Cornelius spoke again, voice surging with resolution. "Judge of the darkness, his confessions are laid bare. Now we beseech your passing of the sentence. Let his worth be measured." A subtle shift of air passed through the chamber, as if the demon exhaled with ancient satisfaction. It extended a taloned hand over my head, fingers needle-sharp. I froze, a beaten rabbit in the presence of a wolf. Death seemed imminent, but then the demon stilled and whispered, "He remains unbound by the greater guilt. The final reckoning is withheld. Let him live for now." Those words left me trembling, but relief flowed through my veins. The monks seemed neither relieved nor disappointed. They accepted the demon's verdict as absolute. As the creature stepped back, it regarded me with those black, reflective eyes. In that gaze, I sensed no mercy, only the stony detachment of a judge delivering a temporary reprieve. When the demon's wings spread, the sound was like dry parchment ripping. It lifted into the rafters and dissolved into the gloom. The chapel was abruptly emptier for its departure, yet the tension remained etched into each face. The chanting ceased altogether, replaced by the rasp of the monk's breath as they waited for their leader's command. Brother Cornelius turned to me. "You see now what we do." He folded his arms. "Each night the judge comes to measure the living. We keep vigil so that it does not scour the land, hungry and untamed. Instead, it visits us here, bound by our rights. We guide it to judge only those who willingly submit. This is our service, our burden." I stood there, heart pounding, still awash in a chill that no fire could chase away. They had turned their monastery into a gateway for something infernal. Did they truly believe they were containing it, or were they, in their zeal, the ones unleashing it? That night I was offered a cell to sleep in. My dreams were plagued by voices chanting in gloom and eyes peering from the darkness. When I woke, the faint glow of dawn shone through the narrow window. The smell of damp stone and stale incense clung to my clothes. As I sat on the cot, I wrestled with warring impulses. Part of me wished to depart that very morning, flee the mountain and never return, but a morbid curiosity tugged at me. Why had these monks surrendered their lives to such a monstrous ritual? Where did the demon's authority end? And were their hearts truly pure? Or was there a darker truth behind these walls? I left my cell, the thin corridor labyrinthine in the hesitant light. A hush lay over the monastery. Most of the candles had extinguished, leaving cold pools of wax. I passed the broad door of the chapel, now sealed and silent, and found my way into a modest library. There, an aged monk sat behind a long table, carefully illuminating a manuscript. His trembling fingers worked with great care, painting an elaborate letter in gold. He looked up with watery eyes. "You are the visitor," he said softly, motioning me closer. His voice bore the same subdued intensity that characterized the others. "I am Brother Fabian. I handle our written records." Curiosity overcame my lingering fear. I approached the table. "Brother Fabian, can you tell me how this nightly summoning began? Brother Cornelius speaks of it as though it is ancient law." He blinked, knuckles whitening around his brush. "Ages ago, this land was plagued by a malevolent force that wandered, reaping souls in their sleep. The first abbot discovered its name and the ritual to bind it within these walls. We chant each night so that the demon visits us alone, sparing the innocent in the valley. So the stories say, and so we have continued through centuries." "What if your summoning fails?" I asked. Brother Fabian's gaze dropped to the manuscripts. He exhaled a shaky breath. "It must never fail. The demon's appetite is infinite. If we cease, it will roam freely once more. That is why we remain sealed off, letting it judge only those who come within these walls." His words held a certain sincerity, yet dread festered in my thoughts. To bind one evil was to harness it. Perhaps they truly believed they were saving others. But the risk was horrifying. My mind snapped back to my own guilt, the demon's breath near my face. I could not imagine night after night of such encounters. And the monks, were they truly penitent, or were they enthralled by a twisted power? I spent the day exploring corners of the monastery, discovering locked doors, forbidden chambers, and spiral staircases leading nowhere. The hush was at times unearthly. At dusk, the monks emerged from their cells to begin their prayers anew. In their tight-lipped stares, I sensed they had accepted me as part of their reality now, just another soul entwined with their monstrous pact. By torchlight, I watched them gather in corridors, chanting in subdued unison until the hour approached for that final rite. There was something mechanical in their movements, each step measured, each verse repeated with dreadful exactitude. Soon we returned to the chapel, where the great black altar awaited. Though I intended to remain an observer that night, the demon singled me out once more, as though it recalled my presence. Brother Cornelius and the monks pressed themselves to the periphery, leaving me in the demon's direct line of sight. My breath caught in my throat as it landed, claws scraping along the marble. Its eyes latched onto me with a cold curiosity. "You return," it hissed. "You have more to confess." I glanced at the silent ranks of monks who stared, unblinking. Something about the demon's question felt like a trick. I swallowed, feeling my heart trip over itself. "I do not know," I whispered. "I thought I confessed all." A sneer shaped its mouth. "Lies unravel in the darkness. Search deeper." I realized then that my presence was more than happenstance. Perhaps these monks had let me stay for a reason. Was I a living offering of some kind, or a potential pawn for the demon's appetite? The weight of their eyes was suffocating. Brother Cornelius's expression suggested unwavering zeal. He wanted my confessions deeper, rawer. The demon demanded it, and they complied. Summoning whatever courage I had, I opened my mouth again, forcing forth memories of old betrayals. Long ago moments where I had harmed without intention, or else turned a blind eye to others' suffering. I spoke of times I had relished others' misfortunes in secret. Each phrase felt like flaying my soul with a blunt knife, an exposing of my darkest recesses. When I finished, the demon's wings twitched. The chanting cut off abruptly. The silence was deafening. Brother Cornelius moved forward, guiding me away with a firm grip on my shoulder. "He has made his supplication," he said to the demon. "Pass your judgment." The demon's grin deepened, revealing the partial glint of fangs. "He walks a fine line. A spark of darkness resides within him, yearning to grow. Shall I devour it or nourish it?" I wanted to protest, to pull away from Brother Cornelius, but the monks had formed a barricade, their eyes bored through me. I saw fervor in their stares, an unholy itch for the demon's condemnation. They might harbor secrets, illusions of piety while seeking to prove their worth through the suffering of others. Maybe that was part of the demon's hold on them, to keep them chanting, to feed off the confessions of lost travelers. Brother Cornelius's voice was unyielding. "In your domain, only you decide. We remain faithful to your verdict." There was a flutter of wings, and the demon launched itself up into the chapel's darkness without another word. Brother Cornelius let go of me, and the monks returned to their kneeling positions. A creeping numbness washed over me. If I stayed longer, I was sure to face a deeper condemnation. What if my presence, my confessions, were fueling the demon, binding me to it? I needed to escape. That night, as the candles burned low, I slunk through the monastery's labyrinthine corridors, searching for a way out. The main gates were locked with iron bars. My frantic search led me to a side door, hidden in an alcove near the kitchens. It was barred from the inside, but after a few tense moments grappling with the rusted lock, I managed to lift the latch. The door groaned open, and I slipped out beneath a swirling veil of mist. I found myself in the courtyard. The mountainous air was bitterly cold, and the spire of the chapel loomed overhead like a crooked finger. I hurried toward the outer walls. The ground underfoot was soft from the perpetual damp, and each step felt like a challenge as I tried not to trip. I reached the outer gate, my pulse roaring in my ears. A voice spoke behind me. "Leaving so soon, without your nightly confession?" I whirled, heart pounding. Brother Cornelius stood in the courtyard, torch in hand. A grim cast to his features suggested he expected this. Torchlight lit the planes of his face, sharpening the shadows beneath his brow. I saw in him not only a loyal servant of the demon, but also a creature of deep fanaticism, fully enslaved by his twisted sense of duty. "You can't hold me here," I said, my own voice trembling but resolute. "I've confessed what you asked. I want no more of this." He raised a hand, and out of the darkness strode 2 monks. They blocked the gate behind me, arms folded, eyes dim with unwavering devotion. I realized with horror I was cornered. Brother Cornelius's grip tightened on the torch. "Your confessions are far from complete. The judge has not finished with you." I took a step back, searching for a gap in their formation. Why keep me here?" "Because," he said quietly, "the demon is never sated by our confessions anymore. We, the faithful, have bled ourselves raw of guilt. We are husks, upheld only by righteousness. It needs fresh sins to feed on, new wickedness to judge. You came, bearing unexpiated darkness. Our tradition requires we offer you up so that the demon remains bound." My stomach twisted with revulsion. They lured travelers, desperate for lodging or knowledge, into their fortress, forcing them to stand trial before this winged abomination. Then they used these souls to nourish the demon's appetite for sin, ensuring it never left the monastery to wreak havoc beyond. The monstrous cycle fed upon innocence. I was about to break into a sprint, but 2 monks lunged and pinned my arms. Their grip was iron. I struggled, cursing, but I was no match for their combined strength. They dragged me back inside, torchlight flickering across our contorted shadows on the cold stone. My pleas for mercy went unanswered. The door slammed shut behind us with a deafening thud. They brought me to a dim chamber beneath the chapel. It reeked of damp earth and old blood. In the center stood a rough-hewn stone dais, adorned with archaic symbols. My heartbeat thundered. The men forced me onto my knees, pressing me against the dais. Brother Cornelius bent close, whispering in my ear, "We will force every sin from you. The demon's thirst must be slaked." As though, in answer, a renewed chanting drifted from the chapel above. I could almost sense the presence of the demon, waiting in the shadows. Panic rose within me, and I fought with every ounce of strength. My mind raced, searching for any hope of escape. The dais was carved with grotesque images of winged fiends devouring soulless figures. Anguish wove through my mind as I realized how many had likely knelt here before me. Suddenly, the chanting above crescendoed, and a rush of wind blasted through the chamber. The demon emerged from the gloom, gliding down the stairs as if passing through solid walls. It landed near the dais, its shape contorting in the flickering torchlight. The stench of sulfur assaulted my senses. Brother Cornelius stepped back and dropped to one knee, as did the other monks. "Judge of the darkness," he spoke with reverence, "we bring you a vessel of sin. Hear his final confessions, and grant your unholy verdict." The demon advanced, crouching just inches from me. Its talons scraped across the stone, and I felt its breath on my neck. "Why do you tremble?" it whispered, voice laced with cruel amusement. I clenched my jaw, refusing to speak. Something sparked within me, a desperate rebellion. I might have sins, but I would not surrender them for the demon's consumption. Anger swelled in my gut when I thought of these monks conniving to feed strangers to this monster. The demon laughed, a sound that resonated with malignant glee. "So, you deny me now? That is not wise." A swirl of black wings and a sudden searing pain ripped into me as a taloned hand sliced across my shoulder. My scream reverberated in the chamber. Warm blood trickled down my arm, the wound shallow but precise. "Speak," it commanded, "or face your end." Tears blurred my vision. Bracing myself against the dais, I choked out words that felt like lumps of hot coal. But this time I did not recite my failings. Instead, I spat them with defiance, naming not only my own weaknesses, but the hypocrisy of this vile monastery. I cursed the monks for their submission to evil, for alluring innocents to feed the demon's hunger. The demon's eyes narrowed, and Brother Cornelius hissed for my silence. Yet I continued, half crazed with pain and fear, feeling some savage satisfaction in exposing their twisted devotion. As if in reaction, the room's air shimmered with tension. The demon's wings flexed, as though absorbing my rage. Above us, the monk's chant hesitated, faltering for a heartbeat. Brother Cornelius's composure cracked, and he barked orders for them to keep chanting. Then he thrust a small jagged dagger at me, pressing it into my palm. "Carve out your confession," he muttered through gritted teeth. "Offer your blood to the judge." My broken will flared into revolt. In that instant, I realized they didn't just want confessions, they wanted a sacrifice. The demon inhaled deeply, relishing the tang of my blood in the air. Desperation burned through me. With raw terror fueling my limbs, I yanked my arms free from the monk's loosened grip. My sudden outburst took them by surprise. I could barely stand, but I found enough strength to lash out with the dagger. A startled monk staggered back, blood blossoming on his robe. Brother Cornelius shouted in fury. The demon snarled, wings flaring, chaos descended. The chanting above became frantic, like a panicked chorus. In the confusion, I bolted for the stairway leading out of that chamber. In the dark corridors, shouts echoed as the monks gave chase. I took a twisting route, half blind from the flicker of failing torches. My wounded shoulder throbbed. More than once I nearly slipped on the cold flagstones. The chanting roared, building to an impossible crescendo. Doors banged open, footsteps hammered the floor behind me, and the swirl of demon wings swooped overhead. I knew I was running out of time. A sudden break in the stone corridor revealed the courtyard once more. Night's chill slapped my face. I sprinted across the open space, ignoring the pain, every step an agony. Behind me, the demon's wrathful cry tore through the darkness. My only thought was to throw open the gates. That was the final barrier between me and the mountain path. I saw the iron chains, thick and unyielding. My frantic hands scrabbled at the massive bar. It was heavier than I remembered, too heavy to move alone in my weakened state. A crash behind me. The demon touched down on the courtyard stones, accompanied by the ragged panting of two monks who had pinned me earlier. Their silhouettes loomed in the torchlight, edging closer. I looked around desperately and spotted a rusted pulley contraption that might raise the portcullis. Summoning my last vestiges of strength, I sprinted to it, and with trembling hands, I began cranking the handle. Brother Cornelius emerged, rage twisting his features. "Stop!" he hissed, voice cracking. He lunged, grabbing me by my wounded shoulder. Agony blinded me. I lost my grip on the crank, but with a wild swing of my elbow, I struck him in the face. He stumbled, stunned. The demon roared like an inferno unleashed. Two monks tried to block me, arms outstretched, but I slid beneath one's grasp and then shoved him aside. I seized the handle again, forcing it with every shred of will I possessed. The portcullis groaned, chains rumbled, and gears shrieked. Inch by inch, the gates rose. Pain exploded in my side as the demon lashed out. Its talons raked me, toppling me forward. I bit back a howl, searching for purchase as I fell to my knees. The demon advanced, the torchlight gilding its hideous shape. Its voice poured forth in an unearthly rasp. "You dare defy judgment?" My vision wavered. I was battered and bleeding, but the gate had lifted enough that a narrow gap opened beneath it. My survival instincts flared. With a final battered effort, I rolled through that gap, ignoring the raw abrasion of stone and dirt on my skin. The demon's enraged cry followed me into the swirling mist. I tumbled down the worn path leading away from the monastery walls, each step a test of my will. My breath came in ragged bursts, my body racked by pain. Behind me I heard the delirium of chanting and the demon's shrill challenge, but I forced myself onward until the shadows of the mountain trees embraced me. The ancient pines loomed overhead, offering only the faint shape of a path, but at least the monastery was no longer visible. Only when my lungs could bear no more did I look back. The silhouette of that cursed stronghold clung to the peak, an outline of turrets and walls enshrouded in swirling clouds. I imagined the demon perched among its battlements, wings folded in black reproach. Perhaps the chanting had resumed in full force to keep it from pursuing me beyond those grounds. With trembling limbs, I pressed on into the night. Guided by faint moonlight, I never discovered how many souls had been devoured by the demon. or how many confessions had echoed in those unholy halls. But I knew with certainty that the monks would continue their nightly summons, binding the judge to that place, and so long as unsuspecting souls wandered into their domain, the demon would be fed its ration of guilt and misery. Yet, for my part, I had broken free, carrying wounds both visible and etched into the hidden corners of my spirit. Perhaps that was its own twisted form of judgment, to endure the knowledge of what I had witnessed and the memory of that monstrous presence, forever breathing on the back of my neck. Dawn eventually broke over the tree line, a weak and hazy light that offered little comfort. I stumbled down the path, bloodied, exhausted, and haunted by the demon's eyes. Yet the weight of condemnation that had compressed my lungs inside the monastery had lessened, replaced by a fragile hope that I might escape its domain. Still, I doubted my freedom was absolute. The memory of the demon's voice, the hiss, the threat clung to me like a curse. I was uncertain I would ever truly wash away the horror that had scoured my soul under those vaulted stone ceilings. In the distance, crows took flight over the silent forest, their raucous cries echoing through the pines. The wind carried the faintest echo of the monastery's final chant of the night, seeming to clamp down on the mountainside with solemn finality. I went on, carrying the burden of my narrowly spared life, a life that would be forever bound to the nightmares of that remote stronghold, where each midnight toll called forth an unholy judge, thirsting to measure the living, and in each twilight I would remember how close I had come to damnation, trembling at the knowledge that, in that forsaken place, high on the mountain, the demon's wings still stirred, waiting for the next lost soul to venture into its darkness.